Welcome everyone. My name is Nikos, aka Sephir, and this is Out of the Box, EDH. In tonight's game, we have Kiwi at the top left, playing his Heliod deck. This is a mono-white enchantments combo list with balance effects. At the top right, I am playing my Kynaios&Tiro of Meletis brew. This is a sacklands deck with 0 landfall cards in it that likes to sacrifice its own lands and then recur them for value. At the bottom right, we have Red Lion and his Leinore deck. This is a humans tribal list with a counter sub-theme. Finally, at the bottom left, we have Olin and his Lathril deck. This is a classic elves deck that wants to go wide and kill with damage or Lathril's drain ability. Without further ado, let's move to our game. Kiwi starts the game with a plains and passes. I play a Scalding Tarn. I sacrifice it for a Taiga and cast an Orcish Lumberjack. I pass. Lion plays a forest and casts a Hardened Scales. He passes. Olin plays a command tower and passes. Kiwi plays a land tax and passes. I play a command tower, cast a Weathered Wayfarer and pass. Lion plays a plains and casts a Walking Ballista for X equals 1. It comes with an extra counter thanks to the Hardened Scales, and he passes. Olin plays a forest, an Arcane Signet, and passes the turn to Kiwi. Kiwi searches for 3 plains with a land axe and puts them to hand. He plays one of them. He also casts an Arcane Signet and Claws of Geeks. He passes the turn to me. I take 1 mana from my Taiga and sacrifice it to my Lumberjack for a total 4 mana floating. I use my Weathered Wayfarer to search for Flagstones of Trocair that I also played as my land for turn. I cast a Farseek for a tropical island, and with my remaining mana, I cast a Titania, Voice of Gaia. I pass. At the end of my turn, Lion decided to remove a counter from the Ballista and kill my Lumberjack. Lion plays a plains and passes. Olin casts a Fauna Shaman and passes, missing his land drop. Kiwi plays a plains and casts a Keeper of the Accord. He passes after that. On my turn, I cast an Excavation. I use the Excavation to sacrifice the Flagstones. I gain 2 life from Titania, search for a plateau and put it in play, and then I draw a card. I play an Arid Mesa as my land for turn and pass to Lion. At the end of my turn, Kiwi searches for a plains and put in play tapped and also creates a 1/1 token thanks to the Keeper of the Accord. Lion plays a Nesting Grounds and casts a Witch Enchanter, targeting my Excavation. Excavation gets destroyed and he passes. Olin plays a Swamp and casts an Elvish Archdruid. He passes. Kiwi casts a Chivalric Alliance. He then plays a Guildless Commons, bouncing one of his planes. He moves to combat and attacks me with the Keeper and Olin with his token. He draws a card from Chivalric Alliance and we both block the attackers, and the token dies. After that, he plays a Martyr's Cause and passes the turn. On my turn, I sacrifice Arid Mesa to fetch a mountain and gain 2 life from Titania. In response to its trigger, I use Weathered Wayfarer to search for a Drownyard Temple and put it in hand. I play a plains as my land for turn and cast my commander, Kynaios&Tiro of Meletis. At the end of my turn, Keeper of the Accord and Kynaios&Tiro both trigger. I draw a card and put an Argoth in play. Lion puts a Blighted Woodlands in play. Olin draws a card and Kiwi puts one of his numerous land tax basics from hand in play. He also fetches for another plains and creates a token thanks to his Keeper of the Accord. After all that, I pass the turn. Lion plays a plains and casts his commander, Leinore, Autumn Sovereign. He moves to combat and Leinore adds a counter to the Ballista, which gets another one thanks to the Hardened Scales. Lion then draws a card since he controls 3 creatures with different powers. He removes a counter from the Ballista and kills my Weathered Wayfarer. After that, he passes to Olin. At the end of his turn, Kiwi creates a token with his Keeper of the Accord. Olin plays a Hedron Archive and casts his commander, Lathril, Blade of the Elves. He passes. On his turn, Kiwi plays his commander, Heliod, the Radiant Dawn, and he immediately flips him. He passes the turn to me. On my upkeep, since I have 4 lands in my graveyard, Argoth and Titania meld into Titania, Gaea Incarnate. When Big Titania enters, she returns all my lands from my graveyard in play. Then, to Kiwi's horror, I cast an Aura Fracture. I play a Drownyard Temple as my land for turn. I tap it for mana and sacrifice it to the Aura Fracture to destroy the Hardened Scales. I cast a Kodama's Reach. I put an island in play and a forest in hand. I move to combat and attack Olin with Titania. He takes the hit for 10 damage. At the end of my turn, Kynaios&Tiro triggers. I draw a card and put a Fiery Islet in play. Both Lion and Olin draw a card, while Kiwi puts another Plains in play. He also searches for another Plains thanks to his keeper and, taking advantage of his commander, casts a Sphere of Safety for just 1 mana. With the sphere on the stack, I sacrifice a land and target his commander with my Aura Fracture. He responds to that by casting an Endless Horizons and an Oratog. They both resolve. Kiwi searches his library and exiles 5 Plains with his Endless Horizons. I search for a Plains and put it in play from my sacrificed Flagstones of Trocair, and Heliod dies, with Kiwi choosing to leave him in his graveyard. I pass. Lion plays his command tower and casts a Sigarda, Font of Blessings. He moves to combat. Leinore triggers, puts a counter on Walking Ballista, and draws a card. He passes to Olin. Olin casts a Circuitous Route. He searches for 2 basics and puts them in play. He then casts a Maelstrom Pulse, targeting Titania. Pulse resolves and Titania dies. He moves to combat and attacks me with his Menacing Commander, but Kiwi responds by sacrificing a token with his Martyr's Cause to prevent all damage Lathril will deal. Olin passes. At the beginning of Kiwi's turn, Endless Horizon triggers, and he puts a Plains to his hand. He searches for another 3 Plains with his land tags and puts them also to hand. He casts a Night of Doves. He moves to combat and attacks me with Keeper of the Accorded a token. He draws a card from Chivalric Alliance. I block the Keeper and take 1 damage. He passes. I cast an Erdiv, Devious Diver, and a Slogurk, the Overslime. I pay 3 mana to return Drownyard Temple from my graveyard in play tapped. Nerdiv triggers, she gets a +1/+1 counter, and I draw a card. I sacrifice 2 fetches. Slogurk gets 2 +1/+1 counters, and I search for a volcanic island and a savanna. I cast a Renin 6. I uptick here, return my Flagstones of Trocair back to hand, and then play it as my land for turn. I move to my end step, where Kynaios&Tiro triggers. I draw a card and put a forest in play. Both Lion and Olin draw a card, while Kiwi puts a canoe in play, bouncing a Plains. He also searches for a plane from his keeper. I pass. Lion plays a forest and casts a Cathar's Crusade. He casts a Guide of Souls, triggering Crusade, and putting a counter to his board. He casts a Thalia's Lieutenant, which puts another 2 +1/+1 counters to his board, and gains a life from the guide. He moves to combat, puts a counter on his Ballista, draws a card, and attacks Renin 6 with Sigarda. I have no flyers, and my Planeswalker dies. He passes after that. At the end of his turn, Kiwi creates a token with his keeper. Olin casts a Poison Tip Archer. He casts an Ordeal of Erebos, targeting his commander. He casts an Elven Ambush and creates 4 elf tokens, and passes. At the end of his turn, Kiwi discards 2 planes from his hand with Chivalric Alliance to create 2 2/2 knights, and then I decide to destroy his Endless Horizons by sacrificing my Flagstones of Trocair with Aura Fracture. He creates a 1/1 bird with Night of Doves, and I search my library for a Tundra and put it in play thanks to the Flagstones, while Slogurk gets another counter. At the beginning of Kiwi's turn, he searches for 3 planes with land tags and puts them to hand. He plays a plains and moves to combat. He attacks me with 2 tokens and draws a card from Chivalric Alliance. I block and kill both of them. He plays a Goblin Charbelcher and then passes to me. I play an Urza Saga as my land for turn. I cast an Amulet of Vigor and an Aggressive Mining. I sacrifice the Drownyard Temple to the Aggressive Mining to draw 2 cards and put another counter to Slogurg. I float 8 mana and sacrifice all my lands to the Aura Fracture, choosing to target just Kiwi's Sphere of Safety so that I won't create too many enemies. Kiwi creates a bird from Knight of Doves and Slogurg will get another 14 +1/+1 counters. I cast an Overlaid Terrain, and then, with my remaining 4 mana, I cast a Splendid Reclamation, returning all my lands in play untapped thanks to my Amulet of Vigor. I move to combat and attack Lion with Slogurg. He blocks it with his Witch Enchanter, but he still takes 16 trampling damage. I use Argoth to mill 3 cards and create a bear token, and I move to my end step, where Kynaios&Tiro triggers. Both me, Lion, and Olin draw a card, while Kiwi puts a plains in play. I pass the turn. Lion plays a plains and casts from his top of the library a Champion of Lamphold. He gains a life from Guide and puts a counter on his board from Cathar's Crusade. I respond by sacrificing my flagstones to the Aggressive Mining, that draws me 2 cards, put another counter to Slogurg, and makes me realize that I am out of plains. Lion then casts Rick, Steadfast Leader. He buffs his board even more from the Crusade, gains a life from Guide, while he chooses Lifelink and Vigilance from his humans to have. He moves to combat, puts another counter on his Ballista, and draws a card from Leinore. He attacks me with his Thalia's Lieutenant, which I cannot block because of Champion of Lamphold. I take 8 damage, Lion gains 8 through the life gain, and then passes the turn to Olin. Olin plays a Priest of Titania and a Glissa Sun Slayer. He follows her with a Burnished Heart and a Grow from the Ashes. He sacrifices the heart and searches for 3 basics total, while his opponents lose a life from Poison Tip Archer. I respond by sacrificing 2 fetches to search for 2 basics, and my Drownyard Temple to the Aggressive Mining to draw 2 cards, and buff Slogurg even more. I then return the temple to play, putting a counter on Nerdiv and drawing another card. Olin then plays a Summon of the Pack, and targets Kiwi, whose Martyr's Cause has ruined his entire game plan. Kiwi loses 10 life. He moves to combat and attacks Lion with Poison Tip Archer. Lion blocks it with Thalia's Lieutenant, but Kiwi, not wanting Lion to gain that much life, he sacrifices a token to Martyr's Cause, preventing the Lieutenant from dealing damage, and thus dying to the Death Touch. But also, having Poison Tip Archer hurt us for 1 damage more from his sacrifice token. He passes. At the end of his turn, Kiwi activates the Charbelcher, targeting Lion, and he deals 1 damage. His keeper also creates another 1/1 token. On his upkeep, Kiwi searches for 3 planes with land tags. He moves to combat and attacks me with 2 birds. He draws a card from Chivalric Alliance and I take the 2 damage. He casts a Starfield of Nyx, which is active. He passes. At the end of his turn, I tap out and cast a Read the Runes where X equals 29. This is the exact point where all my opponents agreed to work together to take me out. Kiwi used the Charbelcher and deals 7 damage to me. He then sacrifices 4 knights, 1 soldier and 2 birds to the Martyr's Cause, thus Olin's Poison Tip Archer deals 7 damage to Kiwi, me and Lion, which leaves me to 7 life, enough for Lion to just shoot me down with a ballista. This play comes with a cost to Kiwi, however, since I sacrifice enough lands in response to destroy his enchantments, which will also create more birds with Knight of Doves. After that, I die and we go to Lion's turn. Lion plays a plains and casts a Hydra Trainer, triggering both his Guide and his Crusade. He plays a Caradora, Heart of Alakria, again triggering both the Guide and the Crusade, but now the Crusade gives an additional counter to its creature thanks to Karadora. He moves to combat, his commander triggers and puts 2 counters on Hero of Lamphold and draws a card. Respecting Kiwi's sacrifices to take me out, he attacks just Olin with Rick, Guide and Leinore. Olin can't block and dies, while Lion goes to 54 life thanks to the life gain. Kiwi plays a Lotus Veil, sacrificing 2 planes. He casts an Angel of Indemnity, which brings Heliod back from his graveyard into play. Heliod's ETB triggers. He brings Martyr's Cause from the graveyard to hand. He transforms Heliod to his backside and passes the turn to Lion. Lion plays a Plains and casts a Lifecrafter's Bestiary and a Wild Beast Master, which triggers his Guide and his Crusade. He moves to combat and his commander triggers, giving 2 counters to the Ballista and drawing a card. He attacks Kiwi with Karadora, Rick, Leinore and Guide. Kiwi responds by playing Martyr's Cause for just 1 white and sacrificing 4 tokens to prevent all damage. Lion passes. At the end of his turn, Kiwi activates the Charged Belcher and deals 5 damage to Lion. Also, his keeper creates another token. On his turn, Kiwi plays a Plains and activates Charged Belcher, deals 6 damage to Lion. Then, with lots of mana floating, he casts a Renounce, sacrificing all his permanents except the Lotus Veil, the Karoo, his commander, and the Charged Belcher, and going back to 46 life. He then casts a Balancing Act. Lion decides to take a big risk and keeps 0 of his lands in play, but only his Sigarda, the Ballista, Champion of Lamphold, and the Crusade. Kiwi then plays an Archaeomancer's map, searching for 2 planes to put in hand. He plays one of them as a land for turn and casts a Skybind, targeting Sigarda. Sigarda gets flickered until end of turn, losing her counters, but her entering will trigger the Crusade for another counter on Lion's board. He passes. Lion plays his top deck, a Forest, and attacks Kiwi with his big Champion of Lamphold. Kiwi takes the damage and goes to 19. He passes. Kiwi plays another Plains as his land for turn and ponders if it's worth it to cast his Dimensional Bridge. He concludes that it is not, and thus concedes to Lion's board, giving him the victory.
Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.